In today's episode, we're exploring 5 horrifying safari deaths ever recorded. From a photographer who climbed too close to leopard cubs, to a volunteer's fatal dedication to gorillas. Let's begin with the first story, where one family's dream vacation turned into an unimaginable tragedy. It was July 15, 2016, and the vast plains of Serengeti National Park stretched endlessly under the African stars, their ancient rhythms undisturbed by the modern world beyond its borders. The Patterson family's campsite sat in a remote section of the park, far from the luxury lodges and established tourist routes. Michael and Sarah Patterson had chosen this budget safari operator specifically for its promise of authentic wilderness experiences, believing their daughters Emma and Sophie would benefit from sleeping under the real African sky rather than behind the walls of expensive accommodations. Michael Patterson had been planning this trip for 2 years, working overtime at his accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio, while Sarah picked up extra nursing shifts at the local hospital. At 32, Michael was determined to give his family an adventure that would create lasting memories, even if it meant cutting corners on luxury to afford the experience. Sarah, 29, had initially been hesitant about bringing their young daughters on such an adventurous trip, but Michael's enthusiasm had eventually won her over. The family had been in Tanzania for 4 days, and the girls were already enchanted by the wildlife they had seen during their game drives. 6-year-old Emma had filled a notebook with drawings of zebras and giraffes, while 4-year-old Sophie collected interesting rocks and leaves that their guide had said were safe to touch. The budget tour operator had provided basic camping equipment and a guide who managed multiple groups simultaneously, often leaving families unsupervised for hours at a time. That evening, the family had set up their tent in an area that their guide had assured them was safe, though he had mentioned almost casually that lions sometimes passed through the region during their nightly hunts. The campsite lacked the electric fencing and elevated platforms that more expensive operators used, relying instead on a basic perimeter of rope and small solar lights that were supposed to deter wildlife. African lions are apex predators that hunt primarily at night, using coordinated pack strategies to take down prey much larger than themselves. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds, while females are typically smaller but more agile hunters. Lions have excellent night vision and acute hearing, making them perfectly adapted for nocturnal hunting. Prides often work together during attacks, with different members taking specific roles to ensure successful kills. Around 10 p.m., Michael noticed that their tent's main zipper had broken, leaving a gap of several inches that couldn't be properly closed. Sarah suggested they ask their guide for help, but Michael was reluctant to wake the man who had been managing 3 different campsites and seemed exhausted. Instead, Michael decided to attempt a temporary repair using the small sewing kit that Sarah had packed for emergencies. Michael worked by flashlight while Sarah and the girls tried to sleep, but the repair proved more difficult than expected. The tent's fabric was thick and the broken zipper teeth were jammed, requiring him to cut away damaged sections and attempt to create a makeshift closure using safety pins and cord. A pride of 5 lions had been hunting in the area and had detected the unusual activity at the human camp. The broken tent, the moving light, and the unfamiliar sounds had drawn their curiosity, and they began approaching the campsite with the stealth that made them such effective predators. Around 3 a.m., Michael was still working on the tent repair when he heard a low growling sound just outside the fabric walls. He froze, his flashlight beam wavering, as he tried to determine the source of the noise. The growling grew louder and was joined by additional sounds that suggested multiple animals were surrounding their tent. The first lion pushed through the gap in the broken zipper, its massive head and shoulders forcing the opening wider as it entered the confined space of the tent. Michael grabbed the flashlight and tried to use it to drive the animal back, but the lion's predatory instincts had been fully triggered by the scent and sounds of the trapped humans. Sarah screamed as the lion's jaws clamped down on Michael's arm, the powerful bite crushing bone and tearing through muscle tissue. The sound woke Emma and Sophie, who began crying as they witnessed their father being attacked by the massive predator. Sarah tried to shield her daughters while calling for help, but their remote location meant no assistance was available. A second lion entered the tent through the widened opening, followed quickly by a third. The confined space became a death trap as the pride's coordinated hunting instincts took over. Michael's attempts to fight back were futile against the lion's superior strength and natural weapons, his injuries from the first attack leaving him unable to effectively protect his family. The lion's attack was swift and methodical, their natural hunting behaviors adapted perfectly for taking down multiple prey in a confined space. Emma and Sophie's cries were cut short as the pride's attack continued, the lion's powerful jaws and claws inflicting fatal injuries on all 4 family members within minutes. The guide discovered the scene at dawn when he arrived to check on the family's campsite. The lions had departed hours earlier, leaving behind a scene of devastation that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Emergency services were called, but all 4 family members had died from massive trauma inflicted during the coordinated attack. The investigation revealed multiple safety violations by the tour operator, including inadequate campsite security, insufficient guide supervision, and failure to provide proper safety equipment. The company's permits were revoked, and new regulations were implemented requiring electric fencing and armed guards at all camping sites in predator areas. The Patterson family's deaths sent shockwaves through the safari tourism industry and prompted their extended family to advocate for stricter safety standards for budget tour operators. The tragedy highlighted the deadly consequences of cutting corners on safety measures in one of the world's most dangerous environments. But families weren't the only people who underestimated the deadly power of African predators. In South Africa, a photographer's determination to capture the perfect shot would bring her into fatal contact with one of nature's most elusive killers. It was April 3rd, 2014, and the dense bushveld of Kruger National Park provided perfect cover for the predators that ruled this ancient ecosystem. Elena Rodriguez had been tracking a female leopard for 3 days, following the elusive cat through terrain that few tourists ever experienced. The Spanish photographer had finally located her quarry, resting in a massive marula tree with her 2 young cubs, presenting the exact opportunity she had been hired to capture. Elena Rodriguez had built her reputation photographing wildlife in the mountains of Spain, but African assignments represented a significant step up in both prestige and danger. At 27, she was determined to establish herself as a serious wildlife photographer, taking on increasingly challenging assignments that other photographers avoided. The Nature magazine that had commissioned her leopard photos was paying well, but they expected images that would stand out from the thousands of generic safari shots flooding the market. Elena had been working alone for most of her 3-week assignment, believing that solo work allowed her to get closer to animals without the noise and distraction of guides or other photographers. Her experience with European wildlife had given her confidence, but nothing had prepared her for the territorial aggression and protective instincts of African predators defending their young. That afternoon, Elena had positioned herself about 50 meters from the tree where the leopard family was resting, using a telephoto lens to capture images of the cubs playing while their mother watched vigilantly. The shots were good, but Elena knew they lacked the dramatic impact that would make them magazine-worthy. Leopards are solitary, territorial predators known for their incredible climbing ability and fierce protection of their young. Adult females typically weigh between 60 and 130 pounds, but possess strength far exceeding their size, capable of dragging prey twice their weight up into trees. Mother leopards with cubs are particularly dangerous, as they will attack any perceived threat to their offspring with devastating ferocity. Elena noticed a large sausage tree about 30 meters from the leopard's resting spot that would provide an elevated angle for more dramatic shots. The tree's thick branches and sturdy trunk made it appear safe to climb, and Elena reasoned that the height advantage would allow her to capture unique images while maintaining a respectful distance from the leopard family. What Elena failed to realize was that her chosen tree was positioned directly above the leopard's primary escape route, the path the mother would use to move her cubs to safety if threatened. By climbing the tree, Elena had unknowingly blocked the leopard's exit strategy and positioned herself as a direct threat to the family's security. As Elena reached a height of about 15 feet and began setting up her camera equipment, the mother leopard's behavior changed dramatically. The cat's ears flattened against her head, and she began making low, growling sounds while positioning herself between her cubs and Elena's location. The leopard's attack came without further warning, the powerful cat launching herself from her resting branch with explosive force. The mother leopard covered the distance to Elena's tree in seconds, her claws finding purchase on the bark as she climbed toward the perceived threat. The leopard struck Elena with devastating force, her powerful claws raking across the photographer's back and shoulders, while her jaws clamped down on Elena's neck and head. The impact of the attack caused Elena to lose her grip on the tree, and both she and the leopard fell toward the ground in a tangle of claws, teeth, and camera equipment. Elena hit the ground hard, her camera gear scattering across the rocky soil as the leopard continued her attack. The cat's maternal instincts drove her to eliminate the threat completely, her powerful jaws inflicting massive trauma to Elena's head and neck, while her claws opened deep wounds across her torso and limbs. Elena's struggles grew weaker as blood loss and trauma overwhelmed her system, her body unable to withstand the leopard's relentless assault. The remote location meant that no help was available, and Elena died from her injuries within minutes of the initial attack. Elena Elena's body was discovered 2 days later by park rangers who had been alerted when she failed to check in at her scheduled time. Her camera equipment was found scattered around the attack site, with her final images showing the leopard's increasing agitation before the fatal encounter. The investigation revealed that Elena had violated park regulations by working alone in dangerous areas and approaching too close to wildlife with young. Her death prompted stricter enforcement of safety protocols for photographers working in national parks and highlighted the extreme dangers posed by protective mother leopards. Elena's tragic death served as a reminder that even experienced wildlife photographers could fall victim to the unpredictable nature of African predators, particularly when maternal instincts were involved. Her story became a cautionary tale shared among wildlife photographers about the importance of understanding animal behavior and maintaining safe distances. Yet photographers weren't the only professionals who found themselves in deadly encounters with African wildlife. In Botswana, a conservationist's dedication to his research would lead him into a fatal confrontation with one of Africa's most deceptively dangerous animals. It was September 28, 2017, and the crystal-clear channels of the Okavango Delta reflected the African sky like mirrors, their pristine waters hiding some of the continent's most dangerous predators beneath their deceptively peaceful surface. Dr. James Mitchell had been living at his remote research station for 6 months, studying hippo behavior patterns in one of the world's most pristine wetland ecosystems. The isolation and intimate access to wildlife represented the opportunity of a lifetime for the marine biologist turned conservationist. Dr. James Mitchell had dedicated his career to understanding aquatic ecosystems, earning his PhD in marine biology before transitioning to African wildlife conservation. At 35, he was considered one of the leading experts on hippo behavior, but his passion for his work had led him to take increasingly risky approaches to data collection. His research station was located in one of the most remote sections of the Delta, accessible only by boat and staffed by just James and a single research assistant. James had been documenting the daily movement patterns of a local hippopod, tracking their feeding routes and territorial behaviors to better understand their impact on the Delta's ecosystem. His work required him to collect water samples and observe the animals at close range, often working alone when his assistant was occupied with other research tasks. That morning, James had planned to collect water samples from a narrow channel that the hippos used as a highway between their daytime resting areas and nighttime feeding grounds. He had observed their patterns for months and believed he understood their schedule well enough to work safely in the area during what he considered low-risk periods. Hippopotamuses are among Africa's most dangerous animals, responsible for more human deaths than any other large mammal on the continent. Adult bulls can weigh over 4,000 pounds and are capable of running at speeds up to 30 miles per hour both on land and in water. Their massive jaws can open to 150 degrees and deliver bite forces exceeding 1,800 pounds per square inch, easily capable of crushing a human body or biting a canoe in half. Hippos are highly territorial and become extremely aggressive during mating season or when protecting their young. James waded into the channel carrying his water sampling equipment, confident that the hippos were all resting on land during the heat of the day. The water was chest deep in the center of the channel, but James had worked in similar conditions dozens of times without incident. What he didn't know was that a large territorial bull had recently moved into the area and was resting submerged in the deeper water just upstream from his sampling location. The massive hippo had been aware of James's presence from the moment he entered the water, but had remained motionless in the murky depths while assessing the threat. Hippos can hold their breath for up to 5 minutes and often rest completely submerged during the day, making them nearly invisible to humans working in the water above them. As James moved deeper into the channel to reach the optimal sampling location, he unknowingly entered the hippo's territorial zone. The 3,500-pound bull erupted from the water without warning, his massive bulk creating a wave that knocked James off balance before the animal's jaws could reach him. James tried to retreat toward the shore, but the hippo's speed in water made escape impossible. The massive animal's jaws clamped down on James's torso with bone-crushing force, the impact driving him underwater as the hippo's territorial aggression took over completely. The hippo's attack was prolonged and brutal, the massive animal using his enormous size and strength to ensure that the perceived threat was completely eliminated. James's research equipment scattered across the channel as the hippo continued his assault, his powerful jaws and massive weight inflicting fatal injuries that no human could survive. James's research assistant discovered his body hours later when he failed to return to the research station at the scheduled time. The investigation revealed that James had been working alone in known hippo territory during mating season, when the animal's territorial aggression was at its peak. James's death prompted a complete review of safety protocols for wildlife researchers working in aquatic environments and highlighted the extreme danger posed by hippos to humans working in their territory. His research station was relocated to a safer area, and new regulations required required researchers to work in pairs when collecting samples in hippo habitat. The tragedy served as a reminder that even experienced wildlife researchers could fall victim to the unpredictable nature of African animals, and that familiarity with wildlife behavior was no guarantee of safety when working in close proximity to dangerous species. However, researchers weren't the only people whose professional activities brought them into contact with deadly African wildlife. In Zambia, an adventure tourist's quest for thrills would lead him into the jaws of one of Africa's most patient predators. It was December 11, 2015, and the Zambezi River flowed past Victoria Falls with deceptive tranquility, its muddy waters hiding some of Africa's most dangerous predators beneath their placid surface. Kevin O'Brien had been staying at a backpacker lodge near the falls for 3 days, drinking heavily with other travelers and seeking increasingly dangerous thrills to impress his new friends. The 24-year-old Irish graduate had been traveling through Africa for 2 months, documenting his adventures on social media and constantly pushing the boundaries of acceptable risk. Kevin O'Brien had arrived in Africa fresh from university with a degree in business and a trust fund that allowed him to travel indefinitely without working. His social media accounts were filled with photos of bungee jumping, whitewater rafting, and other extreme activities, each post designed to showcase his fearlessness and adventurous spirit. Kevin's need for validation through dangerous stunts had escalated throughout his trip, with each new activity requiring greater risk to generate the same level of excitement. The Backpacker Lodge, where Kevin was staying, catered to young adventure tourists, offering cheap accommodation and easy access to extreme sports activities. The lodge's bar was a gathering place for travelers sharing stories of their exploits and daring each other to attempt increasingly dangerous feats. Kevin had quickly established himself as the most reckless member of the group, often accepting dares that other travelers considered too dangerous. That evening, Kevin had been drinking heavily with a group of fellow backpackers when the conversation turned to swimming in the Zambezi River. Local staff and experienced travelers had warned against entering the water due to the presence of Nile crocodiles, but Kevin dismissed these warnings as exaggerated attempts to control tourist behavior. Nile crocodiles are among the world's most dangerous reptiles, with adult males reaching lengths of 20 feet and weights exceeding 1,500 pounds. These apex predators are perfectly adapted for ambush hunting, capable of remaining motionless for hours while waiting for prey to approach. Their explosive attack speed and bone-crushing bite force make them responsible for hundreds of human deaths annually across Africa. Nile crocodiles are particularly dangerous in areas near tourist activities, as they often associate human presence with easy feeding opportunities. Around dawn, Kevin accepted a dare from other backpackers to swim across a section of the Zambezi known for its crocodile population. Despite warnings from lodge staff and the obvious danger of the murky water, Kevin's alcohol-impaired judgment and need to maintain his reputation for fearlessness overrode his survival instincts. Kevin entered the water at a popular fishing spot where local guides had reported recent crocodile sightings. The river appeared calm and peaceful in the early morning light, but the murky water made it impossible to see more than a few inches below the surface. Kevin began swimming toward the opposite bank, his strokes creating ripples and splashing sounds that carried far through the quiet morning air. A massive Nile crocodile, over 16 feet in length, had been hunting in the area and detected Kevin's movement in the water from several hundred meters away. The ancient predator began approaching with the patience and stealth that had made crocodiles successful hunters for millions of years, remaining completely submerged as it closed the distance to its prey. Kevin was halfway across the river when the crocodile struck, the massive reptile launching itself from the depths with explosive force. The crocodile's jaws clamped down on Kevin's leg with bone-crushing pressure, the impact driving him underwater as the predator began its signature death roll. The crocodile spun rapidly in the water, using its massive weight and powerful tail to disorient Kevin while maintaining its deadly grip. Each rotation caused additional trauma as the reptile's teeth tore through muscle and bone, while the spinning motion made it impossible for Kevin to surface for air. Kevin's screams had alerted other travelers on the riverbank, but no rescue was possible once the crocodile had seized him. The massive reptile dragged Kevin into deeper water, where the death roll continued until his struggles ceased. The entire attack lasted less than 3 minutes, but the crocodile's grip never loosened. The crocodile disappeared beneath the murky water with Kevin's body, carrying its prey toward the deeper pools where it would cache the remains until ready to feed. Kevin's backpack and clothing were found on the riverbank, but his body was never recovered despite extensive search efforts by local authorities. The investigation revealed that Kevin had ignored multiple warnings about crocodile dangers and had entered the water while intoxicated. His death prompted the lodge to implement stricter security measures and better enforcement of river safety rules. But the tragedy highlighted the deadly consequences of treating African wildlife as entertainment. Kevin's death became a cautionary tale shared among backpacker communities about the importance of respecting local warnings and the deadly reality of African predators. His social media accounts, filled with increasingly dangerous stunts, served as a reminder of how the pursuit of thrills could lead to fatal consequences. Still, adventure tourists weren't the only people who found themselves in deadly encounters with African wildlife. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, a volunteer's dedication to conservation would lead to a tragic miscalculation with one of our closest evolutionary relatives. It was February 19, 2013, and the mist-shrouded mountains of Virunga National Park provided sanctuary for some of the world's last remaining mountain gorillas. Catherine Williams had been volunteering with a gorilla conservation program for 4 months, working to protect these magnificent creatures from poaching and habitat destruction. The 26-year-old veterinary student from Vancouver had developed a deep emotional connection to the gorilla families she helped monitor, often staying late at the research station to observe their behavior. Catherine Williams had always dreamed of working with endangered species, choosing veterinary medicine specifically to pursue a career in wildlife conservation. Her volunteer position at Virunga represented the culmination of years of study and preparation, offering hands-on experience with one of the world's most endangered primates. Catherine's dedication to her work was evident in her willingness to extend her volunteer period and take on additional responsibilities beyond her original assignment. The conservation program where Catherine worked focused on monitoring gorilla health and behavior while protecting them from the constant threat of poaching. The work required researchers to maintain close contact with habituated gorilla families, observing their daily activities and documenting any signs of illness or injury. Catherine had been assigned to work with a family group led by a large silverback male who had been showing signs of respiratory illness. That morning, Catherine was conducting a routine health assessment of the gorilla family when she noticed that the silverback's condition appeared to be worsening. The massive male was showing signs of lethargy and had been coughing frequently, symptoms that could indicate a serious respiratory infection that might spread to other members of the group. Mountain gorillas are incredibly powerful primates, with adult silverbacks weighing up to 440 pounds and possessing strength estimated at 10 times that of an adult human. Despite their generally peaceful nature, gorillas can become extremely dangerous when they feel threatened or are protecting their family group. Silverbacks are particularly aggressive when ill or stressed, as their leadership role requires them to defend their group against any perceived threats. Their massive hands, powerful arms, and large canine teeth make them capable of inflicting fatal injuries even without malicious intent. Catherine's concern for the silverback's health led her to approach closer than normal protocol allowed, hoping to get a better assessment of his breathing patterns and overall condition. She had worked with this particular family for months and believed she understood their individual personalities and tolerance levels, but illness had made the silverback unpredictable and more aggressive than usual. As Catherine moved within the silverback's personal space to observe his breathing, the massive gorilla interpreted her approach as a threat to his weakened condition and his family's safety. Gorillas communicate through body language and territorial displays, but Catherine's focus on his medical condition caused her to miss the warning signs that should have prompted her to retreat. The silverback's attack was sudden and devastating, his massive hands grabbing Catherine and pulling her to the ground, while his powerful arms delivered crushing blows to her head and torso. The gorilla's incredible strength made resistance impossible as he continued his assault, his protective instincts driving him to eliminate what he perceived as a threat to his family. Catherine's screams echoed through the forest, alerting her colleagues who were working with other gorilla groups in the area. They arrived to find the silverback still attacking Catherine, his violent behavior preventing them from immediately intervening to help their colleague. The researchers eventually managed to drive the gorilla away using noise and distraction techniques, but Catherine had already sustained fatal injuries from the prolonged attack. The remote mountain location meant that medical evacuation would take hours, and Catherine died from massive trauma before help could arrive. The investigation revealed that Catherine had violated safety protocols by approaching too close to an ill and stressed silverback without proper backup from other researchers. Her death led to revised safety guidelines for gorilla research and highlighted the unpredictable nature of wild gorilla behavior, even among animals that had been habituated to human presence. Catherine's tragic death served as a reminder that even the most dedicated conservationists could fall victim to the unpredictable nature of wild animals, and that emotional connections to wildlife could lead lead to dangerous lapses in judgment. Her story became a cautionary tale within the conservation community about the importance of maintaining professional distance and following safety protocols when working with potentially dangerous species. Thanks for watching. Click the next video for the next stories that will show you why even the most experienced professionals can fall victim to nature's most powerful predators.